Support for this public radio podcast comes from the Sleep Number bed by Select Comfort, the bed that lets you and your companion adjust the mattress firmness to your exact preference, your sleep number.
Indeed. Well, it's been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon, Minnesota, my hometown, out there on the edge of the prairie. It's coming into spring. Weather's been mild. It's been in the 40s and the 50s. Most of the snow is gone except out in the woods. We're seeing box elder bugs now. We're seeing centipedes, actually, and some flies as well. And the snow melting means that there are ponds where there didn't used to be out in the cornfields. Sometimes enormous lakes. An enormous lake in Roger Headland's cornfield where this last week 6 trumpeter swans came gliding in for a landing and came down and paraded around looking for corn like out of a fairy tale somehow. Although when he came out and he brought them grain and corn and he fed them, not one of them turned into a beautiful woman and offered to marry him, perhaps because they knew that he was married already. And none of them offered him the secret of wisdom, perhaps because they knew that he was Lutheran, and so he wouldn't use it anyway. We don't operate on wisdom, we operate on faith. There is still a thin sheet of ice on the lake. You would not want to walk out on it. You'd have a terrible surprise. And so there are warning signs every 100 yards or so all the way around the lake. Danger, thin ice, which some people in the town council argued against, saying that these signs were a sort of a challenge, that people would see them and wonder how thin. Well, let's find out. But the town clerk, Viola Tours, said that no, they were required by state law. They were required for liability reasons. But people will walk out on them. People argued about this at the meeting. You may as well put up a sign on the sidetrack tap, danger, don't lose your mind. Put up signs on curves, centrifugal force may apply to you. People will look for danger. It's in the air when spring comes. The last person to go through the ice actually was the town drunk, Alvin, who had come from the sidetrack tap. There was no help for him. He saw the warning sign, danger, thin ice. And Alvin has spent his life looking for the edge, trying to find it so he can look over the edge and see how far down it is. He walked out there. He went through the ice. He was rescued. He was cold. He got pneumonia. And as a result of pneumonia, he lost his tolerance for alcohol, which meant that the one distinction he had attained in his life was now lost to him. Just one glass of beer would make him dizzy and nauseous. But he was looking for the edge. People are looking for the edge to see how far you can go before you get into really serious trouble. It's the time of year when moths appear, and they're looking for bright lights. They would prefer a flame, but they'll settle for the porch light, and they'll beat themselves against it. And so do you and I. We're looking for adventure. That's the meaning of adventure, and it comes upon us suddenly when the weather warms up. Irene Bunsen was doing her laundry in the basement, and a centipede suddenly ran up her pants leg, just went and made it up to her thigh, which was as far as Clint made it before they were married. And she whacked it, and it died right there against her pale white Lutheran thigh under her pants. But it had attained what it wanted. It was looking for adventure. And it went as far as it could go. The Muellers headed off on a family vacation yesterday. They were in the Chatterbox Cafe for breakfast. The Muellers, Fred and Dolores and Brittany Mueller. And they were there to head off to Buffalo, New York, off to see Mr. Mueller's relatives. This is an interesting family group. They believe that you should fly on a full stomach, so they come down to the Chatterbox Cafe to have a stack of pancakes and 2 eggs over easy on the side and hash browns and sausage before they head down to the airport and get on a plane. An interesting family group. Brittany is 16 years old, and she has just recently turned toward the dark side. She has dyed her hair kind of a dark green that looks like a particular kind of mold that you wouldn't want to be involved with, and black fingernails and black lipstick. Her bedroom has become a kind of a swamp, a kind of a landfill. And Dolores went in there to do reconnaissance under the guise of cleaning it. They've been worried about her. She's become sullen and quiet. And when Dolores asked, "Are you going to sell Girl Scout cookies this year?" Brittany gave her a death stare. The death stare, and she went into her room. So Dolores, while Brittany was at school this last week, went in to clean, and she found in the underwear drawer a picture of Brittany with a young man in a muscle shirt with tattoos all the way from his shoulder down to his wrist on his right arm, and his arm was around Brittany, who was snuggling up against him, and he had some kind of brown bottle in one hand. He didn't look like the sort of person you would want your daughter hanging out with. And then she found some underwear in Brittany's drawer which said, "Dare you," on it. And that was when they came up with the idea of this family vacation. And they made sudden plans to fly off to Buffalo, New York, thinking that Brittany could profit from being around her father's elderly relatives, his siblings and his aunts and uncles, who would recall times back in the day when they had gone to their first Bob Dylan concert and when they had been involved in civil rights marches and so forth. History from long, long, long before she was born. "His name is Gary," she said. "Just give me a break. Just get off my back. He's a wonderful person." Okay, he's 31 years old. All right. He's doing community service. He did time for the DWI. He's doing community service, and he's going to go back to school in the fall. He's going to earn his high school diploma so he can pay his debts. Just get off my case. They called and made the reservations immediately. And there they were in the Chatterbox Cafe, and Brittany was sitting alongside her father and talking to him. She was only having some plain yogurt and tea. And she was refusing to acknowledge by sight or any other way the physical existence of her mother, who had betrayed her and gone into her room and done some spying. She would not acknowledge her mother's presence on this earth. Her mother was a non-person. Her mother had been purged from her life. Teenagers have this capability to be Stalinists deep in their heart. And she refused to acknowledge. You could see it was going to be an interesting time going out to Buffalo with Fred's relatives, who are all Unitarians. They're all of them Unitarians. They've been involved in every march that was ever conducted. When they have a pancake breakfast, it's to raise money to send somebody to Nicaragua. I mean, it's. His sister Ellen has had this clipboard permanently attached to her left forearm, getting out petitions accusing the government of some wickedness or some willful ignorance or whatever. And they are hoping that Brittany will be influenced by her relatives in Buffalo to channel her anger away from her parents and toward the government, to channel it upward. which is a noble thing to do. Not to take out your anger on people around you. You feel uncomfortable with your family and you're angry at your people you work with and so forth. And then you think about George W. Bush, and suddenly you don't mind those people around you so much. This is his function. He is performing this function beautifully well. If you can't be competent, at least be obvious, so that you will serve a symbolic purpose. Spring, almost in Lake Wobegon, the spring equinox was this last week. We do not celebrate it in Lake Wobegon because it would be bad luck. We do believe that there is a blizzard beyond the equinox. And perhaps, too, there is a late March blizzard, and there may be an April blizzard. There could even be a May blizzard. We believe that hope creates these storms, you see. Hope creates suction that draws these storms down from Saskatchewan. People get carried away with spring, and they throw away their heavy clothing and their scarves and their gloves, and they get into their shorts and their sandals, and they go out golfing, and they ignore the fact that even though it's in the 60s, it still is the month of March, the month that God designed to show people who don't drink what a hangover is like. This is a violent month. And the golfers are out on the golf course when the storm strikes. They haven't paid any attention to the weather now. They've been carried away with euphoria, and they're teeing up at the 8th hole. And they're on the tee, and they're so into the game they don't notice the white flakes that are starting to fall on them, standing there in their yellow pants and their white shoes and their short sleeve shirts with the alligator on the pocket. It's the wrong animal. You should have chosen a coyote. An alligator has no business here, but they tee off. They think the white stuff coming down is fluff from the cottonwood trees. It's seeds or something. It's something coming down from the somewhere, and they tee off, and they don't notice it until the 9th hole. They're as far away from the clubhouse as they can get, and they hit the ball down the fairway into this sand trap that never was there before. It's in the middle of the fairway. It's a snow trap, and it disappears in this snowdrift, and they waste precious time as the snow is moving in, trying to find the little white ball in the midst of all of this snow. And when they finally find it, they can no longer see where the clubhouse is or anything. They're struggling through a blinding blizzard, a foursome of men inappropriately dressed, still trying to haul their golf bags with them. They're trying to make it back to the clubhouse. They don't have any idea where this is. They're freezing cold. They don't believe they can possibly die, but suddenly it sort of dawns on them that they can. And then as they think they're coming towards the parking lot of the clubhouse, the automatic sprinklers come on. And they're drenched with this cold, freezing rain, and ice forms on their enormous yellow and white bodies, and they fall down into the snow, and now they realize they are going to die. And with their last breath, they take out their scorecards and they attempt to write letters to their wives. Lying there in the snow, they write, "I love you, have a good life, don't marry Chris." And then they're rescued by caddies who were brought up in poor families on the wrong side of the tracks, and so they expect things to go wrong. They're used to difficulty and pain and misery, and so the caddies rescue them, and they drag them back to the clubhouse, and they're taken away to the Four Seasons Hospital. And they recuperate there, but not completely. They don't ever get completely well. They have to move to Costa Rica. They can no longer tolerate changes in climate. They become climate challenged. And so they move to Costa Rica, where they have to learn how to keep score in Spanish. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, quinque, sexto. And they live there in this sort of convalescent climate. And they should be happy there. They have plenty of money, and yet living in Costa Rica under the shade of the spreading jacaranda tree and so forth, and drinking a gin and tonic and sitting there in your yellow shorts after a round of golf on a January afternoon. Nonetheless, you feel this nostalgia for Minnesota. This terrible grinding nostalgia for those people that you used to know. They become all too vivid in your own mind. You sit there, you should be happy, but you can't be. This is not your country, not your climate, not your place, not your history. And so you remember with stunning clarity. You remember Highway 10 as it heads north from St. Cloud up towards Brainerd, and that turnoff that you always took. And you remember all of those little farms and those silos and the feedlots along the way and the mailboxes and the decorations on them, the little plow, the antlers on the mailbox and the signs, firewood and strawberries, pick your own, and snowmobile, make best offer. You remember all of these things, and then that turn, and then the grain elevator, and the steeple of the Catholic Church, and the Chatterbox Cafe, and you can see them all where they would sit along the bar. You're living in a strange country whose language you will never know, these beautiful people speaking rapid Spanish. You can no more understand this than you could translate the sounds of water running over a brook. And so they will never know you. They will never know you. And now you think about that alto who stood in front of you in choir when you sang, "Every valley shall be exalted." That alto with the short, short hair, that beautiful alto who gave off that lovely aroma of lilacs. Who was she? What was her name? There is nobody in Costa Rica who can answer that question. She disappears as if into a blizzard, and you, your memory, your stories disappear with her. Spring equinox, be careful. There's another storm coming. Play golf if you must. Take a parka with you in your bag. Take firewood. Take a Sterno can with you. Other people make fun of you, but there's a reason for it. That's the news from Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, all the children are above average.